The diner went silent the moment they walked in. 7 bikers, leather-clad and loud, their boots hammering against the cracked linoleum floor like a warning. The kind of men who owned every room they entered, who fed off fear and thrived on chaos. In the back corner booth sat Walter Green, 73 years old, his cane resting against the table, his worn navy ball cap pulled low over silver hair. He didn't look up from his coffee. He'd seen worse than this. Vietnam had taught him that evil came in many forms, and sometimes it wore a smile. But what those bikers didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have understood as they swaggered toward that frail old man, was that Walter Green wasn't alone. He never really was. It started with a shove. The leader, a mountain of a man with a scarred face and dead eyes, knocked Walter's cane to the floor. "This seat taken, old man," he sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey and rot. Walter said nothing. His hands, gnarled with arthritis and trembling slightly, simply reached down to retrieve the cane. That's when the biker kicked it away. Laughter erupted from the pack, cruel and sharp, slicing through the tension like broken glass. The waitress behind the counter froze, her hand hovering over the phone. She wanted to call the police, but fear paralyzed her. Walter slowly lifted his head, his blue eyes steady and calm, the kind of calm that only comes from a man who has stared death in the face and walked away. "Son," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "you don't want to do this." The biker leaned in close, his face inches from Walter's. "Or what, Grandpa? You gonna stop me?" And that's when everything changed. Walter didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply pulled out his phone, his fingers moving slowly across the screen, and sent a single text message. 3 words, "Need you now." The bikers didn't notice. They were too busy enjoying their power, their dominance, the way the entire diner had become their stage. One of them grabbed Walter's coffee and poured it onto the floor, the brown liquid spreading like a stain across the tiles. Another knocked over the salt shaker, the crystals scattering like broken promises. The leader sat down across from Walter, his grin wide and vicious. "What's the matter, old-timer? No fight left in you?" Walter folded his hands on the table, his wedding ring catching the dim light. "I fought my war," he said softly. "I don't need to prove anything to you." The biker laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "That's what I thought. You're nothing." Yeah, but outside in the parking lot, engines were already roaring to life. And they weren't coming to talk. 20 minutes. That's all it took. Walter sipped his water, his expression unchanged, while the bikers continued their circus of cruelty. They didn't hear the rumble at first, the low growl of motorcycles and trucks converging on the diner from 3 different directions. They didn't see the shadows moving outside the windows, the figures stepping out of vehicles with military precision. But when the door swung open and the first man walked in, the air shifted. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes sharp and calculating. He wore a simple black jacket, but the way he carried himself, the way every muscle seemed coiled and ready, told a different story. Behind him came another. Then another. Then 5 more. 10 in total. All of them former Navy SEAL, all of them brothers, and all of them there for one reason. Walter Green had called, and they answered. The leader of the bikers turned, his grin faltering. "Who the hell are you?" The SEAL in front didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly toward the booth, his boots silent despite their weight, his gaze locked on the biker like a predator sizing up prey. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and laced with steel. "We're his family." The biker tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. "Family!" "This old man?" The SEAL nodded, his jaw tight. "This old man saved my life in Fallujah. Carried me 3 miles through enemy fire with a bullet in his leg. So yeah, family." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And you just made a very big mistake." The other SEAL fanned out, surrounding the bikers with the kind of silent coordination that only came from years of operating in the darkest corners of the world. There was no yelling, no threats, just presence, just power. And the bikers, for the first time in a long time, felt afraid. The leader tried to save face, puffing out his chest. "You think you can intimidate us? There's 7 of us." The SEAL smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "There's 10 of us, and we've taken down entire terror cells with less." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But we won't need to, because you're going to apologize to that man. Pick up his cane and walk out of here. And if I ever hear about you bothering him or anyone else again, we'll find you. And trust me, you don't want that. The silence was suffocating. The biker looked around at his crew, at the hardened men surrounding them, and for the first time, he understood. He wasn't the toughest man in the room. He wasn't even close. Slowly, reluctantly, he bent down and picked up Walter's cane. He placed it gently against the table, his hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he muttered, the words bitter on his tongue. Walter nodded, his expression unreadable. "Apology accepted. Now go." And they did. Without another word, the bikers filed out of the diner, their bravado shattered, their pride in ruins. The door swung shut behind them, and the diner exhaled. Walter looked up at the men surrounding him, his eyes glistening. "You didn't have to come." The SEAL who had spoken placed a hand on Walter's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "Yes, we did. You taught us that. You never leave a man behind." One by one, the others stepped forward, each clasping Walter's hand, their respect and gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. The waitress finally moved, tears streaming down her face, and brought Walter a fresh cup of coffee. "On the house," she whispered. Walter smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Thank you, sweetheart." As the SEAL began to leave, the leader turned back one last time. "We'll always be here, Walt. Always." Walter raised his cup in a silent toast, and they were gone, disappearing into the night as quickly as they'd come. The diner slowly returned to normal, the patrons whispering among themselves, but Walter sat alone in his booth, his cane resting beside him, his heart full, because he knew the truth. He wasn't just a disabled veteran. He wasn't just an old man. He was a brother. He was a brother. And brothers never let each other stand alone. And that was worth more than any battle he'd ever fought.